Börte should have disappeared from history. By every expectation of the brutal world she lived in, she was destined to become little more than another casualty of the endless wars between the nomadic tribes of the Mongolian steppe. She was kidnapped by enemies, separated from her husband, and thrust into a life where survival itself was uncertain. Yet decades later, the greatest empire the world had ever seen would trace part of its foundation back to her. Most people know the name Genghis Khan. Far fewer know the woman who stood beside him before he ruled a single tribe, before armies marched across Asia, and before the Mongol Empire existed at all. Even fewer realize that one of the defining moments in Temüjin's rise to power began not with a battle for land or wealth, but with a desperate mission to rescue his wife. The question is not simply who Börte was. The real question is why one woman became so indispensable that her fate helped shape the future of an empire stretching from the Pacific Ocean to Eastern Europe. The story begins on the vast grasslands of Mongolia during the second half of the 12th century. It was a world without permanent cities, where families traveled with their herds across endless plains, and survival depended on mobility, alliances, and strength. Loyalty could shift overnight, and a tribe that seemed powerful one season might vanish the next. Marriage among the Mongol tribes was rarely just a personal affair. It was political, forging alliances that could determine whether a clan survived or was destroyed. Every marriage carried strategic importance, and promises made between families could influence generations. Temüjin first met Börte while he was still a young boy. His father, Yesuje, arranged the marriage with Börte's father, Sechin, a respected leader of the Ongjurat tribe. Such agreements were common, but this one would eventually become one of history's most consequential unions. Everything changed before Temüjin could return to claim his bride. His father was poisoned by rival Tatars, leaving the family vulnerable. Their own followers abandoned them, stripping away nearly all protection and wealth. Temüjin's family was suddenly fighting starvation instead of preparing for leadership. Most people assume Genghis Khan's rise began with military genius. It actually began with years of desperation. Temüjin spent much of his youth struggling merely to keep his family alive. Hunting small animals, gathering roots, and surviving brutal winters became daily challenges. Every hardship taught lessons about endurance, leadership, and the value of trusted allies. Those lessons would become priceless once Börte entered his life. Several years later, Temüjin returned to the Ongjurat to fulfill the marriage agreement. Börte became his wife, and her family honored the union with valuable gifts, including a luxurious sable fur coat. At first glance, it appeared to be nothing more than an expensive wedding present. In reality, that coat became one of the smartest political investments in Mongol history. Temüjin presented the sable coat to Togrul, the powerful ruler of the Khareid tribe who had once been allied with his father. The gift reinforced an old relationship and helped convince Togrul to support the young leader. In the politics of the steppe, generosity often opened doors that weapons alone could not. For a brief moment, life seemed to improve. Temüjin had regained an important alliance, established his household, and appeared ready to rebuild his family's position. Then disaster struck. The Merkit tribe launched a surprise attack against Temüjin's camp. Their motive reached back to an older grievance. Years earlier, Temüjin's father had abducted Temüjin's mother from the Merkits, and the tribe now sought revenge against the next generation. The attack was swift and devastating. Temüjin escaped with only a handful of followers, but Börte was captured and carried away into Merkit territory. Losing a wife in the steppe was more than a personal tragedy. It threatened a man's honor, political standing, and future lineage. Many leaders might have accepted the loss and moved on. Temüjin refused. Instead of seeking revenge alone, he turned to the alliances he had carefully built. Togrul answered the call. So did Jamaka, Temüjin's childhood blood brother, who would later become his greatest rival. Together, they assembled a coalition strong enough to challenge the Merkits. The rescue campaign revealed something remarkable about Temüjin's leadership. He understood that victory depended not only on courage, but on cooperation. He persuaded independent leaders to unite behind a shared objective long before he united the Mongol tribes themselves. The coalition attacked the Merkits with speed and surprise. Historical sources describe a successful assault that scattered the tribe and freed many captives, including Börte. Yet the rescue solved one problem while creating another. Soon after her return, Börte gave birth to her first son, Jachai. Because of her captivity, questions emerged about whether Temüjin was truly the child's biological father. The controversy never fully disappeared. Temüjin publicly recognized Jachai as his legitimate son, refusing to reject either Börte or the child. That decision demonstrated extraordinary loyalty, but it also planted seeds of future conflict. As the empire expanded decades later, disputes over Jachai's parentage would complicate succession politics among Temüjin's sons. Few personal decisions made during his early life carried greater long-term consequences. As Temüjin slowly expanded his influence, Börte's role became increasingly significant. Unlike many royal wives remembered only through family connections, Börte appears repeatedly in historical accounts as a trusted partner whose judgment mattered. The primary source, known as the Secret History of the Mongols, portrays her as intelligent, composed, and politically aware. Although medieval chronicles often focus on military campaigns, they still preserve several moments that reveal Börte's influence over critical decisions. One example came during a dispute involving Jamaica. As tensions grew between the former allies, Börte reportedly recognized the danger before Temüjin fully did. According to the chronicle, she warned that Jamaica's ambitions made coexistence increasingly impossible. History proved her assessment correct. The friendship collapsed, leading to years of conflict that ultimately ended with Temüjin's victory and Jamaica's execution. Whether Börte's advice directly shaped every decision cannot be known with certainty, but the surviving evidence suggests that Temüjin valued her political instincts. As Temüjin conquered rival tribes, Börte assumed responsibilities extending far beyond family life. Managing an expanding imperial household required organizing supplies, supervising servants, overseeing captured wealth, and maintaining relationships among noble families. These tasks lacked the drama of cavalry charges, yet they were essential for keeping a rapidly growing state functioning. The Mongol Empire was built on movement. Armies could travel enormous distances because the society behind them remained remarkably organized. Elite women often managed camps while men campaigned, giving them practical authority that surprised many foreign observers. Börte stood at the center of that system. Her status as Temüjin's principal wife also mattered enormously. Mongol rulers could have multiple wives, but not all held equal rank. Börte occupied the highest position, and her sons enjoyed advantages in succession over children born to secondary wives. That hierarchy helped stabilize the early empire, though it never eliminated rivalry completely. As Genghis Khan's dominion expanded across northern China, Central Asia, and beyond, Börte rarely appears in descriptions of battles. Instead, she remained a stabilizing presence within the imperial family. While generals won victories on distant frontiers, she represented continuity at the heart of the ruling household. The contrast is striking. History often celebrates conquerors charging into battle, yet empires also depend on people who preserve unity behind the front lines. Börte belonged firmly in that second category. Even after Genghis Khan's death, the influence of her lineage endured. 4 of her sons became central figures in dividing and governing the empire. Urgide eventually succeeded his father as Great Khan, while Chagatai, Talyui, and Jachai founded branches whose descendants ruled vast territories for generations. Without Börte, that dynastic foundation would have looked very different. Despite her importance, Börte remains surprisingly absent from popular history. Part of the reason lies in the sources themselves. Medieval chroniclers devoted far more attention to warfare than to domestic politics, leaving historians to reconstruct her influence from scattered references rather than lengthy biographies. Modern scholarship has also challenged older assumptions about women's roles in the Mongol Empire. Archaeological discoveries and closer readings of written sources increasingly reveal that elite Mongol women exercised genuine administrative and political authority. They managed camps, controlled economic resources, negotiated alliances, and sometimes governed territories in their own right. This does not mean the Mongol world was an equal society by modern standards. It was still deeply hierarchical and often violent. Yet compared with many contemporary civilizations, noble Mongol women possessed unusually significant influence within both family and state. Another common misconception is that Börte disappeared after her rescue. In reality, she remained Temüjin's principal wife throughout his rise, and retained exceptional prestige within the imperial court. Her position was never reduced to that of a symbolic queen. Historians continue debating certain details surrounding Jachai's birth and the exact extent of Börte's political influence. The surviving evidence cannot answer every question with complete certainty, but there is broad agreement that she occupied a uniquely important place within Temüjin's inner circle, and that her marriage carried consequences reaching far beyond the personal. There is also a powerful irony at the center of her story. The campaign launched to rescue one captive woman strengthened alliances, elevated Temüjin's reputation, and helped set him on the path toward becoming Genghis Khan. An event that might seem like a private family crisis became a turning point in world history. When people picture the Mongol Empire, they often see charging horsemen, sweeping conquests, and cities falling beneath clouds of arrows. Those images are certainly part of the story, but they are not the whole story. Behind one of history's greatest conquerors stood a woman whose loyalty endured hardship, whose judgment earned respect, and whose family became the backbone of an empire that transformed Eurasia. Börte did not command armies across continents, yet her influence reached farther than many generals ever could. History remembers Genghis Khan as the empire's architect. It should also remember Börte as one of the strongest foundations upon which that empire was built. Sometimes the people who change the course of civilization are not the ones leading the charge into battle, but the ones who make victory possible long before the first arrow is ever released.